Hi there, this is Dinesh Narendran talking to you about the most controversial topic ever in implantology, the loading concepts or protocols. These are the headings under which we are going to discuss this topic. We start with an introduction, then the three concepts of loading, which all of you are familiar with, then the rationale behind the concepts of loading, that is, why is there these three different concepts and protocols. Next, the factors that determine the selection of loading concepts. We have about 8 or 9 factors, which we discuss all these factors here in this lecture. Next, the criteria for doing immediate loading of implants. Then the various methods to assess primary stability, which itself is one of the major factors in selecting the type of protocol. Then the advantage and disadvantage of immediate loading. And finally, the survival rates or success rates for each protocol. So these are the headings under which we are going to discuss this topic. Let us move on.
Introduction. What do you mean when we say loading the implants? Now, you know that an implant prosthesis has three components. An implant or fixture which is placed inside the bone, and an abutment which is normally screwed onto the fixture, and a crown or a suprastructure normally cemented onto the abutment. The implant or fixture will start receiving load only when a crown is placed over it. Till that time, when the implant is inside the bone while the healing is taking place, it is not receiving any load at all. So that is what they mean when they say loading the implants. Means you have started to place a crown on top of the implant, and now the implant start to receive occlusal load. So the $1 million question is when to place the crown. See, when to load implant is the hottest topic ever in implantology since its beginning. We have moved further away from the original Breinemark prescription of delayed loading, and yet we haven't comfortable enough to adapt immediate loading fully in many respects. So we are neither there or here. That is the state of current affairs in implantology now. But let us draw some conclusion from the scientific data which is available. We will just move on and first understand the three popular concepts in loading. Well, the three most popular concepts are delayed, early loading, and immediate. In delayed loading concept, after we place the implants, we wait for implant to osseointegrate for 3 to 4 months in mandible and 5 to 6 months in maxilla. Only after this healing period that we load the implant by placing the prosthesis. We call it early loading if you load the implant, that is, you fabricate the prosthesis before 2 months to as early as 1 week. And we use the term immediate if we load the implant simultaneously or within 48 hours, even if with a temporary, with or without occlusion. The term we use is immediate loading. We will see the merits and demerits of all the protocol in detail. At the time being, you just look at the time span where these terms are used. But the problem here is there was no consensus to this time period in a strict sense. Some use the term immediate even if you load the implant after a week. Every book article had different time limit for these terms. So to overcome the confusion, a board was constituted which had participants from 13 countries meet at the 5th ITA Consensus Conference held at the Switzerland on 2013. And they collected all the scientific evidences of these three protocols that was available till that date, and among other things, they proposed a definition for these terms. So these are the definitions that are followed worldwide, and their recommendation is as follows. Conventional loading is defined as being greater than 2 months subsequent to implant placement. And early loading of implant is defined as being between 1 week and 2 months subsequent to implant placement. And immediate loading is defined as being earlier than 1 week subsequent to implant placement. So these are the definitions that you need to use in exam, quoting the 5th ITA Consensus Conference, and the published article is given below as reference. So let us see delayed loading in detail. This was the original protocol suggested by Breinemark. the father of dental implants. He noticed that once you place implants inside the alveolar bone, the process of osseointegration takes weeks and even months. Even then, the first bone formed around implant was woven bone, which is not capable to receive load because woven bone is only partially mineralized. He also noticed that healing takes place faster in mandible than in maxilla. Because of this, he suggested not to load the implant by placing crowns on it while osseointegration takes place. Not only that, he advocated submerged healing. That is, implant should not be exposed to oral cavity during the healing phase and it should be submerged under the soft tissue. So he suggested a healing period of 3 to 4 months in mandible and 5 to 6 months in maxilla. But what we need to understand here is the Breinemark suggested this protocol for machined implants of that era, which did not have any surface treatment at all. But thanks to the advancements in technology, modern day implants are surface treated, which has faster osseointegration time. So today, when we follow delayed protocol, we don't need to wait more than 3 months in any arch. Whether it is maxilla or mandible, we are going to load it after 3 months. And that is what we call it as conventional loading protocol. He also found that whenever implants failed to achieve osseointegration, the major reason for it was micromotion of implant inside the bone of more than 100 micrometer. So a submerged healing prevents micromotion and hence more predictable. Lastly, this is the most popular protocol as it is the oldest protocol. So you will find lot of research work associated with this protocol than any other protocol of loading. Hence, the biggest advantage of delayed loading is its predictability, the safest in terms to achieve osseointegration. And also, as I said earlier, since it is the most researched one, it is the most evidence-based protocol to follow in implantology. Coming to the disadvantages, in theory, the protocol take into account only bone healing. No other factor was considered. The greatest disadvantage is its long waiting time. May not be convincing to many patients. And as time is more, cost also goes up. It is less aesthetic, as it is not the ideal choice for anterior teeth replacements, as aesthetic needs to be restored very quickly. That's all about delay. Let's see other protocols as well. As we move forward, we have improved on surgical techniques and prosthetic procedures to place and restore an implant. The submerged healing was questioned frequently. The inference is this. Look at the graph. Even if we wait till the healing phase is over, say after 3 to 6 months, the bone is still in the remodeling phase. The fully mature stage will take more than a year. So it is not feasible to wait that long. So the idea changed. Rather than looking at the healing of the bone, measures at improving the stability of the implant were the primary concern to achieve faster loading. And hence the terms primary and secondary stability came into existence. And we were looking at measures to improve primary and secondary stability by optimizing implant design and surfaces, and also looking at improving the way we prepare the osteotomy site for faster osseointegration and faster loading. And thus, early loading came into existence. The concept here is to adopt several measures to achieve good stability of implant and load the implant early without waiting for the bone to heal. Now, what is primary and secondary stability? How to augment them? All of this will be discussed later in this class. So that's all about early loading. Next protocol is immediate loading. First, let us look at the history. The concept started between 1960 and 1970 with Linko's blade bed implants. Although a failure, these were the first immediate loaded implants. Then in 1979, Letterman documented the first immediate loading case, which was a bar retained overdenture. Shipman discussed the possibility of immediate loading in FPD. And finally in 2002, a consensus conference defined immediate loading protocol with exact indications and consideration. But all the early studies of immediate loading showed very high failure rate, which can be attributed to poor shape and surfaces of the implants available at that time, not so optimal materials as today, poor understanding of healing, and unfavorable prosthetic designs. Soon, studies favoring immediate loading emerged. It was proven that micro movement above 150 micrometer was determinantal to osseointegration. The literature suggests that there is a threshold limit which is between 50 and 150 micrometer. In this threshold limit, an early load on implant might actually simulate newly formed bone to remodel. A study by Rubin and McLeod examined bone growth with titanium cylinders, subjecting to varying degrees of mechanical stimulation. They found that in implants that were not subjected to any type of loading during the healing process, no bone growth was observed. And in some cases, fibrous tissue was present at the interface, and bone loss of about 8.3% occurred, which was attributed to lack of use. On the other hand, daily mechanical stimulation at 1 or 20 Hz for 100 seconds induced bone growth of 28% and 69% respectively. So it was concluded that a short application of mechanical stimulus that involves slight and temporary deformation of bone structure can stimulate osteogenesis, accelerating the response of bone tissue in the healing phase and increase implant retention. So this has been the base for immediate loading protocol. Further, histological studies also confirm good quality bone formation with immediate loading implants, like this study from Tester, Smuckler, Moncler and Franchetti. Growing evidence was also reported from analyzing radiographic data which showed similar bone loss for immediate and submerged implants. So that is about immediate loading. Now if you look into literature, you will find one more term called progressive loading. This was proposed by Misch in 1993. It was for implants placed in poor bone quality type. He suggested that implants placed in deficient bone should not be exposed to full load after osseointegration. Instead, the load should be minimal initially and progressively increase as the bone density increases. For progressive loading, he suggests to use acrylic temporaries. First without occlusion, weeks after add acrylic to the occlusal surface to increase loading, followed by permanent restoration in full occlusion. The time interval is decided by bone density. So that is progressive loading. The final inference is this: delayed loading protocol is safest and more predictable, but modern implants and technique have fastened the osseointegration and relies on primary stability, favoring early loading protocol. And there is growing evidence to immediate loading. It may not be applied to every situation, but there are specific situations where, following certain strict consideration, immediate loading can be applied. And progressive loading may be beneficial in poor bone quality. But in order to apply these concepts, one need to have thorough knowledge about these terms called primary and secondary stability. Primary stability refers to mechanical stability or retention achieved by implant at the time of placement. That means when we prepare osteotomy for implant placement, we purposefully prepare the osteotomy site at least 0.5 millimeters smaller in diameter than the actual diameter of the implant. This results in implant squeezed into the bone during placement, with the sharp threads engaging the bone, giving a stability which we call it as primary stability. Whereas secondary stability is the biological stability achieved by bone deposition in the micro gap between the implant and the bone that happens after osseointegration. So primary stability is the first stability achieved by implant immediately after placement by mechanical friction, and secondary stability is the one which is achieved later when bone starts to grow into the implant surface during osseointegration process. So for long-term survival of implant, the secondary stability is the one which maintains the implant throughout. But in order to achieve secondary stability, the implant should not have micro movement during healing. So the initial primary stability is the one which ensures it. That means primary stability is necessary to achieve secondary stability. So we need both in an implant. Hope you people understood the significance of these terms. If you are, let us now try to make sense or rationale of loading protocols. Now, rationale means the real reason behind the confusion in selecting the type of protocol. Why there is so much of a controversies or confusion in selecting any type. That is rationale. The reason is this. Look at the chart. This is the graphical representation of an implant stability plotted at various time interval after placement. The blue line represents primary stability and the orange line denotes secondary stability and the green line represents overall stability of the implant, the sum of primary and secondary stability. What this tells you is that the primary stability is high, close to 100 Newton at the time of placement. And as hours and days pass, the primary stability keeps on decreasing. Whereas there was zero secondary stability in the beginning, but slowly it picks up as bone deposition around implants happen and it is maintained at a constant level throughout life. It is interesting to note here is that there is a period of low overall stability of implant in the initial stage where neither primary stability is there and secondary stability has not even started to increase. So when you do early or immediate loading, the risk is that you might be loading at a time when the implant stability is very low. And this pattern is different for different case based on so many factors. Look at the pattern in hard bone, the most favored bone for immediate loading. Here the dip in total stability is less compared to other bone types. See the same graph in normal bone. The dip is little more than what we see in hard bone. And in soft bone, the D4 bone, there is literally any primary stability and a large dip in total stability which makes immediate loading a riskier affair. So the rationale is this. The primary stability is one big factor which dictates the time of loading. When you have achieved a good primary stability, any protocol will work. In poor primary stability cases, whatever may be the reason, loading should be delayed. So these are the things that you need to discuss for exams under the heading rationale for loading. So let us move on. Now coming to the fourth heading, factors. We have already seen primary stability is the biggest factor. The rest all the factors, bone volume, bone quality, implant design, implant surfaces, presence or absence of habits, all are related to the first factor which is the primary stability. So if you break up all the factors and classify, you will end up having a list of 8 factors. The interesting thing to note here is all the factors contribute by either increasing or decreasing primary stability. So let us look into these factors in detail. Implant design. Let us see how selection of implant design influence loading. You all know that implants come with various types of threads. Implants which has active threads, like you see here in the extreme right, will help in achieving good primary stability. Likewise, a tapered design is best suitable for immediate loading as it has more chance for achieving primary stability, especially in immediate implantation. The next feature in design is self-tapping ability of implant. All modern implants are self-tapping, which means you don't need to tap the bone before placement, except when you encounter D1 bone. Now what is tapping? Any threaded screw, if it has to pass through a hole, needs threads inside the hole like you see here. Tapping is the procedure to create threads inside the bone osteotomy for easy insertion of implant. All implants available in the market now are self-tapping implants. These implants provide better primary stability and thus more favorable for immediate loading. So that is about implant geometry. For immediate loading, longer implants are preferred. Shorter implants less than 10 mm for any diameter is a poor candidate for immediate loading. Such cases should go for delayed or early. Now, implants with surface treatment or roughness is the prime reason why early and immediate implant loadings become attractive nowadays. Because the difference here is between distant osteogenesis and contact osteogenesis. Allow me to explain these terms for better understanding of the role played by surface treatment implants. Now look at this. You are looking at a diagram which represents the histological events taking place at the micro gap between the implant and the bone. In distant osteogenesis picture, the dark black round color represents implant. The green color you see are the osteoblasts lined at the periphery of the bone, which is indicating that the bone starts to grow from inside of the bone towards the surface of the implant. This is called distant osteogenesis. This is what happens with older machined implants of Breidemark era. This type of osteogenesis takes time, means you need more time to establish secondary stability. And that is the reason for delayed loading of machined implants. In contrast, what happens with surface roughened implants is that osteoblasts attach directly to the surface of the implant and bone grows from both sides, from implant surface to the bone wall and vice versa. So the osseointegration is faster and secondary stability is achieved much more earlier. Thus, these surface treated implants are favorable for early and immediate loading. Hope it makes sense to you. Dear participants, if you are not getting what we are discussing here, don't worry, just note it down and intimate us during the live discussion so that we will discuss it all over again. Okay, so we'll move on. Next factor is splinting. Splinting of all implants together when there is multiple implants, like in full mouth, helps to distribute load and prevent micro movement of individual implant, like you see in these overdenture cases of mine. In fact, immediate loading was first described for full mouth fixed implants, and the just concluded IPS webinar on intraoral welding was based on this, and if you have attended that, you would be able to recollect this. So splinting the implants together increases the chance for early and immediate loading. Next factor is bone quality. Bone quality, as we said earlier, is the major factor in achieving the primary stability of the implant. Hence, D1 and D2 bone are more favorable for early and even immediate loading. And D3 and D4 bones are candidate for either delayed or progressive loading. Next is habit. It is now well established that smoking is a risk factor for dental implant. Wilson and Nunn established a greater failure rate of 2.5% compared to non-smokers. But the mechanism by which it causes this effect is not proven yet. It can be because of anoxia. Persons who smoke 10 cigarettes a day are at greater risk. Next habit is parafunctional habits like clenching, bruxism, etc. Avoid immediate loading in all of these habits. Occlusal load is also a major factor. First is to assess the amount of occlusal load in a particular case. If the opposing arch to the implant is RPD or removable denture, you anticipate less force. Immediate loading is favorable here. But if it is another implant, then the forces are greatest in such situation. So avoid early or immediate loading. One way to control the occlusal load is making it out of occlusion. It is called non-functional immediate loading. Another way is to select a restorative material which suits each purpose. The options are ceramic, acrylic, PEEK, and composites in the decreasing order in their ability to transfer load to the implant. Next factor is surgical technique. There are several ways by which we can modify the technique and achieve a suitable primary stability. One way is under-drilling. That is, your osteotomy is smaller in diameter than the implant diameter. You all know this, right? So one other popular method is osteodensification, where a specialized burr called Densa burr, which is shown in the picture here, is used to expand the bone rather than extracting the bone like other burrs during osteotomy. All these methods improve primary stability and thus favors early loading or immediate loading. So these are the various factors which determine the primary stability of implant and thus are contributing factors in selecting the time of loading. The important thing is to assess the primary stability after placement. There are several methods actually. Well, the easiest is to record the final insertion torque from the physiodispenser or from a torque wrench. The ideal value is 30 to 45 Newton, which is safe to load. Now next is a device called a periotest. It is a device which has an electrically driven and electronically monitored tapping head that percusses the implant a total of 16 times. The entire measuring procedure takes about 4 seconds. The instrument includes a tapping rod that impacts the abutment implant assembly, and readings are obtained ranging from -8 to +50. The interpretation of readings are given in the slide, but a good stability is below 0. But the gold standard is resonance frequency analyzer. The new magnetic RFI device has a transductor, a metallic rod with a magnet on top, which is screwed onto an implant or abutment. The magnet is excited by magnetic pulse from a wireless probe. Implant stability is measured by reading an ISQ value. An ISQ means implant stability quotient, and this value is given by the apparatus. ISQ values of less than 60 denotes poor stability, which is not favorable for loading. A value between 60 and 65 is for conventional loading, and a value between 65 and 70 is suitable for early loading, and greater than 70 is favorable for immediate loading. So these are the 3 common tests to assess the primary stability, of which the most reliable is resonance frequency analyzer. Now let us look at the 6th heading, requirements or criteria for immediate loading protocol. Well, the literature suggests many criteria to follow for immediate loading. The first and the most important prerequisite being the primary stability. A primary stability greater than 30 Newton, which is the final recorded insertion torque, which you record with the help of a physiodispenser or with the help of a torque wrench, or an ISQ value greater than 70. This is the prime prerequisite for the success of immediate loading. Now the second requirement is the bone quality. It is commonly understood that poor bone quality is unfavorable for immediate loading and should be avoided. There are several studies which record poor success rate of immediate loading in D4 bones. So whenever you encounter a poor density bone, you should either go for an early loading or a delayed loading protocol. The third criteria is to have a minimum implant length of 10 millimeter, which is mandatory for immediate loading. There are shorter implants which are of 8 or 6, even 6 millimeter height, When these are to be used, they are to be used with increased diameters and also associated with delayed loading. No immediate loading with shorter implants. Now, the fourth criteria is regarding implant design. Choosing a tapered design and an actively threaded implant over a non-threaded cylindrical implants favors immediate loading. Now, the fifth criteria says immediate loading is contraindicated in certain specific situations, like in the presence of parafunctional habits, like bruxism or clenching, where the forces are continuous throughout. So, the chances of getting increased load and losing the primary stability, whatever which has achieved, might be a good chance for failure. Then there can be cases where the threads of the implants are exposed because of large bony defects, which mostly are grafted lately. These are poor candidates for immediate loading. So it is better to avoid immediate loading in such cases where grafting is required and when the implant threads are exposed because of poor bone volume. Now there are cases where in the maxillary posterior region where you need to elevate the sinus flow, like an indirect sinus elevation procedure. In such cases, it is better to avoid immediate loading because primary stability is scarce in a sinus lift case. The sixth criteria says whenever you encounter multiple implants, they have to be splinted together when they are to be considered for immediate loading, because splinting will reduce stress on each tube on each implant and distribute the stresses to evenly to all the implants together. So each implant is going to receive only less load. And finally, the patient should be put to a soft diet initially. Initially for a period of 4 to 6 weeks, the patient has to be advised to chew only soft diet. Now, immediate loading has many advantages over early and delayed loading. First thing, it restores aesthetics immediately and hence are beneficial for anterior teeth replacement. Second thing is that it is economical as less time is involved. Third thing is it restores function immediately. The patient will be able to chew immediately after implant placement. The fourth advantage is that there are several studies that suggest that a controlled load during the healing phase is going to actually stimulate bone remodeling. So an immediate loading is going to fasten the bone growth. The fifth advantage is that as a temporary is given immediately, soft tissue contours are preserved if they are already there, or you can modify the soft tissue contour by modifying the temporary frequently. That's a big advantage. It saves a lot of time. There are disadvantages also for immediate loading. But all these disadvantages has been discussed earlier. So I'll just go through each of the disadvantages. One thing is that the procedure is not predictable at times. The protocol has no value in poor bone quality. Whenever you encounter poor bone quality, the chance for immediate loading is very less. And it is contraindicated in the presence of parafunctional activities, like we have seen earlier. And then there is insufficient literature to support the theory. Let us lastly look at survival or success rates for each protocol. Look at this table. This table summarizes studies from 1979 to 2007 related to success rate of delayed loading protocol. The mean survival rate in this chart is close to 92% of 15,000 implants for an average period of 8 years. Now this is in straight opposition to a mean survival rate of 94% for immediate loading, with 200 implants for a span of 3.5 years. Now, what we need to consider here is, if you look at the survival rates of immediate versus delayed, the value is almost similar, which favors immediate. But the number of implants and the time span is too less to reach any conclusion. Summary. When to load implant is one of the critical decisions that we take in implantology. Traditionally, we used to anticipate bone healing time and then make these decisions. Lately, it is understood that primary stability is one big factor which determines the merit of these decisions. Primary stability depends on various factors. But soon, implant designs that favor primary stability came into existence. And all the principles and practices are modified to improve primary stability and thus fasten the secondary biological stability of the implant. Today, our efforts are to load implant as early or immediate as possible, which has several advantages to it, like immediate restoration of function, soft tissues are not given a chance to collapse, the bone gets stimulated to grow, etc. Although studies showing similar success rate to immediate loading compared to delayed in good quality bone, it is too early to draw any conclusion. The current status of immediate loading is to follow some strict criteria whenever they are considered.
To conclude, let me say this. We started with the delayed loading. Thanks to better implant design and surfaces, we can now achieve predictable results with early loading philosophy. And we have reached a stage where immediate loading concepts is showing better acceptance as a reliable clinical protocol. Of course, with some considerations. Yet further long-term studies are still needed to confirm the efficacy of the protocol. So till some more evidences about its surfaces, use it where benefits outweigh risk. With this, let me wind up this section. Hope it was beneficial for you all. All the best for your exams. Bye. Take care.